Hello, happy Halloween. I bet you're here for a ghost story, am I right? Okay, well you're in the right place this Halloween because I have one for you. Have you heard of the one of the lonely lighthouse? The one where the keeper goes out to rescue a ship in a storm and he disappears himself under the water. The waves are too big, the night is too dangerous, and he's never seen again. But here's the ghost part. For years later, sailors say they can see the light guiding them in the night, shining against the blackness. The trouble is, nobody's been in that lighthouse ever since the lighthouse keeper got lost. There's nobody there guarding the light, and yet it draws them nearer and nearer towards the rocks, towards the island. Well, that's not the story we're here for tonight. It's a pretty good one, it's a classic one. However, the story I'm here to tell you tonight doesn't happen in the safety of the lighthouse, no. It happens on the island itself. It's got monks, it's got murder, it's got smugglers, it's got everything that you would need in a ghost story, and it's perfect for Halloween. So, sit back, relax, and enjoy.
This, my spooky friends, is the season of the dead, a journey through Britain's darkest places, as All Hallows Eve draws near, and the veil between the living and the dead trembles.
Hello friends and welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, I'm Claire and this is The Wanderless Way. Firstly, let me say a quick thank you to everybody that supports this channel by liking, subscribing, commenting, sharing, becoming members, sending super thanks. Honestly, everything that you guys are doing is helping keeping this channel running, it's helping it to grow, and it's allowing me to continue with adventures like this and sharing the stories that I find with you. Okay, so today is of course a very special episode indeed. It is the final one in our season of the dead, and here we are on Halloween night. We've come all the way to the northeast of England to the seaside town of Whitley Bay because I've heard of some very strange reports surrounding this famous lighthouse. You do not have to have seen the other episodes to appreciate this one, but if you have been with me for the journey so far, then you might just see some of these stories in a different light. No pun intended. Okay, so if you are ready for a fright tonight, wrap that blanket tight around you, maybe dim down the lights, and of course, turn your phone off in respect for the dead. That's enough waffle. Let's wander.
On the cliffs near St Mary's Lighthouse lies a place with a grim name, Curry's Point. It takes us back to 1739, when Michael Curry, a local glassmaker, carried out a murder so brutal it burned itself into local memory.
There's a blue plaque here now, which I'll read to you. It says, Curry's Point. On the 4th of September 1739, Michael Curry was executed for the murder of the landlord of the Three Horseshoes Inn, Hartley. His body was afterwards hung in chains from a gibbet at this spot, within sight of the scene of his crime. Ever since that gruesome event, this headland has been known as Curry's Point, erected 4th of September 1989 to mark the 250th anniversary.
The whispered accounts tell us that Curry was tangled in an affair with the landlord's wife at the Three Horseshoes Inn. One night the landlord awoke to find Curry on top of him. What followed was a frenzy of rage. He beat him savagely and finally slashed his throat with a razor, a crime of passion that horrified the whole community. For this, Curry was hanged in Newcastle, but his punishment did not end at the gallows. His body was brought back here, taken to the headland near the lighthouse and gibbeted, locked in an iron cage and left to swing in the wind. There, above the rocks, his corpse creaked and swayed, picked clean by seabirds, the smell of decay carried on the salt air.
It is a grim image, but not an unfamiliar one if you have already watched my video on Tom Otter in Lincoln, who was also gibbeted for a horrendous crime. Now, these were quite ghastly. They were bone and iron swinging in the winds, but they weren't just to terrify the locals. They were warnings to people not to commit crimes such as this. But from sites like this, some of Britain's darkest legends have begun to form, with local whispering of unholy restless spirits wandering in the places where their bodies are left to swing.
And no doubt the same whispers surrounded Curry's Point. Mothers warning their children not to go near. Fishermen hurrying past, certain the gibbeted man was still waiting from the cliff. Even today the stories linger. Darren W. Ritson, in his book Supernatural North, recalls a time he mentioned the story on a local radio show. The phone lines lit up. Caller after caller claimed to have seen a ghostly figure on the headland, a dark shape standing against the skyline, watching, and then gone.
Is it Michael Curry, bound to the space where his body was left to swing by the sea? Or is it the imagination sparked by centuries of stories?
Before the lighthouse rose on its rocky perch, this island was already marked by centuries of human presence and more than its fair share of death. Once it was no island at all. It stood joined to the mainland, until the coast surrendered to erosion and the waves claimed it. At low tide, pilgrims and villagers could cross by stepping stones, and later by the causeway built in 1929. But its true magic stirs at high tide, when the waters seal it off, leaving anyone who lingers stranded among its ghosts. The first we believe to leave their mark were holy men. A chapel to the Virgin Mary rose here in the medieval age, tended by monks who kept watch over the shore. Their voices carried on the sea breeze, chants marking the hours of prayer. When the lighthouse was built in 1898, the chapel's remains were swept away, its stones lost to time. Yet the ground remembered. When cottages for the lighthouse keepers were raised, human bones were uncovered nearby, the island itself yielding proof that the monks and their faithful were buried here. Some say their spirits still guard the island, walking the rocks at dusk in search of their lost chapel.
Holiness is not the island's only story, because centuries later this place became very popular with the smugglers. Its perfect isolation, distraction from the sea mist, meant it was the perfect place to hide contraband. Barrels of rum, brandy and cases of tobacco will have been hidden in some of the caves around this island, whilst the officers, the customs men, would have been prowling from the mainland. It's thought that maybe some of those things were hidden in the chapel that once held prayer, now holding secrets. And the stories of the smugglers doesn't end there.
In 1722, a local customs officer named Anthony Mitchell was murdered by smugglers. His body dumped on a stretch of sand that still bears the name Smuggler's Creek. Some whisper his spirit lingers, pacing the shore, forever hunting the men who killed him.
The real stories don't end there, because this island has been scarred by contagion as well as violence.
In 1799, a vessel carrying Russian soldiers bound for the Napoleonic Wars was struck by cholera. The sick were herded ashore and quarantined here, the tide itself hemming them in. Few survived. Those who didn't joined the monks in the earth. Buried hurriedly as the disease claimed them one by one, later waves of cholera brought more bodies. No wonder this place feels heavy with memory. Today, St Mary's is known as a conservation site. Its lighthouse retired in 1984, its tower filled with visitors. But beneath the cries of seabirds and the chatter of tourists lies another lair. At certain times, locals say the island feels uneasy. Shadows shift where no one walks. A presence presses close, as if the ground itself recalls every prayer, every crime, every death. This is a place layered with centuries of devotion and betrayal, of plague and passing, an island not only of stone and sea, but of graves and ghosts.
Before we talk any more about the island itself, let's look out to the sea, because if this island carries its ghosts, then the waters that surround it, the great powerful Mother Nature, what stories does that hold?
The sea has always been a place of awe and terror. The ancient Greeks believed it belonged to Poseidon, quick to anger, shaking the earth and stirring storms with his trident. The Celts saw it as a gateway to the other world, a place where beauty and dread lived side by side, where the spirits of the dead might drift just beneath the waves. For sailors, none of this was myth. Every voyage was a bargain with fate. A sudden squall, a hidden reef, a wave as tall as a house could undo a ship in moments. No wonder sailors filled the sea with omens. A seabird circling the mast meant a soul was lost. A whistle on deck could summon a storm. Here at St. Mary's those fears were carved into the rocks themselves. The North Sea is unforgiving, storms rise without warning, and ships have been dashed to pieces on those shores for centuries. Even now wrecks lie beneath the waves, their splintered hulls resting in the dark, silent tombs for the men who never returned home. Take the Jane Clark. On Christmas Eve 1894, she limped towards the Tyne after leaving Norway, bound for Swansea with a cargo of copper ore and pyrite. Captain H. Parker and his 14 men had already endured 10 days of gales so fierce they stripped the vessel of food and wrecked her wheelhouse. For 16 hours she drifted, helpless in the storm, until at 3 a.m. she struck the reef at St. Mary's. By nightfall she had broken apart, scattered across the seabed in just 5 metres of water. Today her remains still lie there, twisted and decayed, 30 metres of wreckage hidden beneath the tide.
There is the true story of the SS California, a proud 4-masted ship which wrecked here on the island on the 15th of January 1913. 8 men sadly lost their lives that day, swallowed up by the sea, their bodies lost somewhere near the lighthouse walls.
These are not just wrecks, they are graves, and like all graves they leave shadows. Fishermen might still whisper of ghostly cries carried on the wind, of phantom ships appearing in the fog, lanterns swinging before vanishing into the mist. Some even say the drowned walk ashore, dripping and silent, their eyes searching for the homes they never saw again. Here, the sea does not forgive. It takes, and it remembers, and every time the tide crashes against the causeway, it brings those memories back with it.
Now, my friends, lean in a little closer. With everything we now know about St. Mary's, the monks, the smugglers, the shipwrecks and the sailors, and of course the gibbet swinging in the wind, you won't be surprised to hear that this place is supposedly haunted.
Paranormal researcher Darren W. Ritson gathered chilling local tales from this very spot. He tells of the car park near the old gibbet site, reached only by a long winding road that seems to grow darker with every bend. By day it's nothing more than a patch of tarmac, but by night it becomes something else entirely, a retreat for courting couples, and perhaps for restless spirits. One couple reported pulling into this car park one moonlit night. For a brief second, as their headlights swept the tarmac, they saw a dark figure of a man standing still right in front of their car. He didn't move, he just stood there, ominously, and then as quickly as he had appeared he was gone, swallowed by the night.
The ghost story that I'm about to tell you is the sort of thing that you would absolutely expect to hear around a campfire on Halloween night when people are swapping spooky stories. But this one, I'm told, is real because it happened to a real person that rang into a radio station, and it happened right here in the car park near Curry's Point at Whitley Bay.
A girl and her boyfriend at the time, like the other couples, had driven up here for some time alone. At some point during the evening, he stepped out into the shadows to spend a penny, and she waits in the silence of the car. It's at that moment the stillness breaks. A thunderous bang crashed down on the roof above her. Terrified, she froze, her eyes wide, certain something or someone was on top of the car. Now, if that had been me, then I'm pretty sure at that point the old urban legend, you know the one where the hook-handed killer taps on the roof, well, that's exactly what would have been on my mind. I would have been convinced that if I looked forward, I would have seen a trickle of blood running down the windscreen and the rat-a-tat-tat of the killer's hook against the window waiting to kill me next. Thankfully, though, it didn't quite end as dramatically as that. Yes, the girl was of course terrified by all accounts, but her boyfriend returned to the car, shaken only by the cold of the night air and nothing else. He'd not seen anything from where he'd been standing, and whoever had struck the roof had left no trace, except of course for the terror which I'm sure still grips her to this day. Courting couples being disturbed in empty car parks, ghostly monks wandering the rocks, and murdered excisemen waiting in the shadows. It is exactly the type of thing you'd expect in a classic horror movie. And yet these are the stories whispered here, at the end of the lonely road, in the shadow of Curry's Point, and against the backdrop of the Lighthouse. Again, if you have experienced anything unusual here near the Lighthouse Island of St Mary's, or any lighthouse island in Britain, you're welcome to share your stories here without judgment.
This windswept island is not the only place where the past clings, because Britain, as we know, is full of stories. From haunted ruins to lonely bridges, from corpse roads to coastal graves, the British Isles are littered with ghost stories.
Some call the UK one of the most haunted countries in the world, and maybe they're right. A YouGov poll in July 2025 found that nearly 40% of people in Britain believe ghosts could exist. 40%. In an age of smartphones, satellites and science, that's no small number. Maybe that's because deep down we never really left the old ways behind. We still touch wood, we still hang charms, we still light candles for the dead. Our technology hums and our cities roar, but in the quiet spaces, the empty car parks, the windswept islands, the dark church naves, something older perhaps still waits.
And here on St Mary's Island, you may just be able to feel it, because it is just one of the many places in Britain where, especially on Halloween night, the veil may be starting to thin.
You might not believe any of it. You might put it down to folklore, shadows or imagination. But tonight, of all nights, Halloween, perhaps let yourself believe just for a heartbeat. Perhaps imagine the veil lifting, the dead walking a little closer, the air thick with the echoes of the past. Because whether you see ghosts or not, whether you call it nonsense or something more, this season of darkness still belongs to memory, to ritual, to the things we can't quite explain. And maybe, just maybe, that's why we're drawn to places like this. To listen, to remember, and to feel the old ways whispering back.
Thank you to everybody for joining me on this journey, on this season of the dead. and what an adventure it has been indeed. So tell me in the comments which has been your favourite episode so far. We'll do a little recap. So we started off at the Devil's Church. We then went to Warren Percy, to the medieval village. From there it was the Corpse Paths, where we learnt about phantom funerals and death omens. And then we went to the Druids Temple for Samhain and the true meaning of Halloween. We've finished it off all tonight with the hauntings of St Mary's Island, putting everything we knew together into this final episode. But before you leave, before you go off and enjoy the rest of your Halloween, let me think about one more thing. As the veil draws near, as the lines begin to blur, here's a thought. What if Halloween is not the darkest season of the all, but the warmer pact to the most frightening time of all, midwinter, Saturnalia, Yule, Christmas? It's a thought for you. So until next time, my friends, stay safe, stay curious, don't have nightmares, and happy Halloween.